Shalom, all praise unto Yahweh Shemi Shai. Double honor to the apostles of GMS. Honest you brothers that be pushing this truth in sincerity. It's going to be a quick video touching in on the financial markets and so on and so forth. Alright, and what they're pushing forth is this economic uncertainty, both here in the UK by way of this Brexit, of which I'm not going to get into too deep. I'll bring out this short article right quick. Okay, but because brothers have already done videos on this, you can check that out on the UK GMS News GMS site that the brothers have put up. So they've got ample material on the topic for you to dig your teeth into. But I'm going to bring out, I wanted to just bring out a few points within this article and then really get into this, because you've got these two parallels that are happening, and more so just other than just these two economies. All right, you also got to bear in mind that the Chinese markets are pretty much slowing down, and they have been for the last 2 or 3 years, and they're supposed to be the second biggest economy in the world. The United States is only surviving because their debt is spread out throughout all the countries in the world by way of the Federal Reserve notes. But as more countries reject the Federal Reserve note, okay, you're going to have more economic turmoil. And that's why they titled this the biggest economic shitstorm in 80 years. And I'll touch on a few points within this article. But like I said, whenever you read these things, once you read the sort of first paragraph, you get the gist of what they're saying. And you get too into it, you sort of lose wind of what the writer's actually saying, because remember, this dude that wants to get paid for it, and although he can concise all that he has to say in the first paragraph, and usually they do, okay, he's still gonna get his money, so they add the relevant backing stories and so on and so forth. Okay, so I'll start off with this. This is as the Bank of England, which is the equivalent to the Federal Reserve Bank out there in the United States, and it says the Bank of England warns Brexit uncertainty is hurting the economy as it happens. It says UK central bank warns that the big economic decisions are already being delayed by uncertainty over EU votes, as it leaves interest rates on hold yet again, because they were supposed to raise them, or you would expect them. I certainly expected them to raise them interest rates at the same time that the Federal Reserve Bank raises interest rates from, what was it, 0.1 to 0.5 or something like that. Can't quite remember the figure, but I already expected them to do that. All right, but they still delaying that because they're sort of feeling out what this uncertainty with this Brexit is going to lead. And brothers have suggested that they're going to actually allow this Brexit to go on, all right, as a means of creating economic turmoil, because we know they need that chaos, man. Okay, well, part of the chaos is going to be by way of the monetary system, and another part of the chaos is going to be by way of what the so-called new world, the so-called world war, the so-called Cold War 2.0. Okay, all right. So in so doing, by having those two things happen at the same time, you're gonna have all kind of, man, the scripture talks about how it's going to be the time of Jacob's trouble, man. And Jake, that being the Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, meaning, you're going to get Italians that are from the, that are Israelites. You're going to get Sicilians that are Israelites. You're going to get people out there in Moabland, China, and all of that, that's going to be descendant of Israel. We know how to live poor, man. Okay? Because we've been in a deprived state for a long time. We've been in poverty for a long time. Now you got it to where they got people that are in a position of power and prestige, quote unquote, but they sold out. Okay, and they're used as the face of wealth. But really, when you see who has wealth, namely the elite banking families, they've got figures that are unquantifiable, man. Okay, I think I did the maths at one point. I think it was something ridiculous, like if they took out like 100 grand every day or every second of their life right up until the time they die at the age of 100, quote unquote, they would have still had a hell of a lot of money in the bank, man. Because if you're estimated at 500 trillion, man, that's what you call as wealth. But that wealth was illegitimately gotten, and that's why the Most High is putting it within their spirit to where they're trying to create the most turmoil as possible. But this is going to be your Frankenstein, man, you elite banking families. This is going to be your Frankenstein because you created this, but this is going to turn against you. Okay? This is going to turn against you. But although, you know, certain ones of the elites are going to escape the missiles and so on and so forth, but you're going to escape it to fulfill prophecy where it said, their nobles shall come down and kiss the feet of the elect men, roughly paraphrased. Okay, so it says European markets are down, but off their worst levels. It says in another volatile day, leading shares fell back as concerns about the effects of the Brexit vote grew. Okay, so along with nervousness after the U.S. Federal Reserve expressed caution about the global economy, so they let you know there. Excuse me, they let you know there that the Federal Reserve is expressing some kind of way about how the economies out there in the world are doing. It says, but the markets came off their lows and helped by a recovery on Wall Street, and despite continuing weakness in oil prices, the Brent crude down more than 3%. So they get into all of that. Like I said, you get pretty much the gist of what they're saying here. Now let's read this. It says, Bank of England Governor Mark Carney has cancelled his planned speech at FinTech Mansion House tonight following the terrible attack on the MPJ Joe Cox. It says the bank said, in light of the dreadful attack, all right, he will no longer be delivering his planned speech, all right, and the governor will be attending the event and will now deliver a short speech reflecting on today's event. And pretty much what he's going to get into, if I'm not mistaken, was he was going to get into all of that, man. All right. So let's see if there's any more relevant pieces here. Right. So pretty much, you know, you can, like I said, you get the pretty much the gist of this. Read. It says the market worries about the UK leaving the EU may be overdone, says Julian Jessup. So whenever they push these, whenever they push the truth out or whatever, they're gonna have a countermeasure to it to get you more acclimatized to whatever you know, hell they're gonna bring upon you. And that's what they did with them LGBT niggas out there, man. Okay, they'll say, oh, they'll have it on TV, or is it right? And they'll have a protagonist and antagonist, and that's what they're doing right here. So this nervousness about the Brexit has obviously been having an increasing impact on the sentiment in the global market. This is perhaps seen as clearly. This is seen most clearly in the strong performance of safe havens such as the Japanese yen and the price of gold, which we have been tracking the latest referendum odds closely. It says, however, this may not last much longer for three main reasons. Just the first, to some extent, the nervousness in the market simply reflects the fact that no one yet knows the result of the referendum. So they're anticipating for the back of that statement that, you know, if it goes in one way, that potentially you can have it to where those markets are gonna recover or whatever. Okay, which is you know, could happen, but it's not for me to say. I'm not a financial analyst or anything. I'm just here to prophesy the scriptures, man. And we know ultimately that this monetary system is gonna fall to shit. All we can do is but speculate what's gonna be the reason, man, until it is manifested. Okay, it said first, to some extent, the nervousness in the market is simply. So I read that. So it says second, even if the vote is for Brexit, the UK would probably remain a member of the EU for several years. It says the result of the referendum will not only be advisory. All right, while UK politicians cannot ignore the views of the electorate completely, most favor remain and could drag the process out or try to find a relationship which replicates the EU membership in all but the name. It says the third, the rhetoric of the global policy makers is likely to change dramatically, as currently those favoring Remain have the incentive to talk about the risk of the Brexit in an attempt to influence the electorate. Okay, so they're basically saying in this statement that people that have benefits in staying, they're just amplifying, some of them risks. But the numbers don't really lie for themselves, man. All right, if you're having some kind of uncertainty, that means whatever way it's gonna happen, it's gonna have some effect. Now, brothers have done said that they could use this exit as a means of crashing the market, man. And you can see that from, pretty much, hopefully I've touched on it enough, right? You can pretty much see that they could do, man. Okay, if you're having market volatility just off of the uncertainty of it happening, then that leads one to believe that if it did happen, then ultimately you would have even worse of a scenario. Okay, so it says biggest economic shitstorm in 80 years is coming. It says the coming collapse will be far worse than the Great Depression, and you need to be prepared. So how are the men of the Lord going to get prepared? You're going to get into the truth. You're going to turn back onto Yahweh Shimi Al-Shai. You're going to teach this truth in its wholesomeness, for lack of a better word. Okay, it says the causes of the Great Depression seem similar to the Great Recession seem similar to the Great Depression, but check those words out. It says significant differences exist. It says previous chairman of the Federal Reserve, Bernanke, had extensively studied the Great Depression as part of his doctoral work at MIT and implemented policies to manipulate the money supply and interest rates in ways that were not done in the 1930s. It says Bernanke's policies will undoubtedly be analyzed and scrutinized in the years to come, because ultimately all of this, they need a man to blame it on, so they're routing it back to the policies that he's implementing. But we know he's just ultimately he's going to be working for the elites, and the elites is going to give him instructions on what to do. He says as economists debate the wisdom of his choices. It says generally speaking, the recovery of the world's financial system tended to be quicker during the Great Depression of the 1930s as opposed to 2000's recession. If we contrast the 1930s with the crash of 2008, where gold went through the roof, it is clear that the US dollar on the gold standard was completely different animal, right? So it's saying here on the gold standard, right, was a completely different animal in comparison to the fiat free floating US currency we have today. All right, both currencies in 1921 and 2008 were US dollars, but in an analogous way, right, if one was a saber-toothed tiger, the other is a Bengal tiger. Okay, they are two completely different animals. Where we have experienced inflation since 2008 crash, the situation was much different in the 1930s when deflation set in. All right, unlike deflation of the early 1930s, the U.S. economy currently appears to be in a liquidity trap, or a situation where monetary policy is unable to stimulate any economy back to health. So when they implement any kind of legislation, for instance, holding the Federal Reserve interest rates as low as possible, that's not allowing them to stimulate any economic growth. Right? It says in terms of the stock market, nearly 3 years after 1929, it says the DGIA dropped 8.4 and in August 12th in 1932, and says we have experienced great volatility with large in intraday swings in the past 2 months in 2011. So we have not experienced any record-shattering daily percentage drops to the tune of 1930s, where many of us that have that 1930s feelings in light of the DGIA, the CPI, right, and the national unemployment rates, where national unemployment rates were simply not living in the 1930s, and some individuals may feel as if we're living in a depression. It says, but for many others, the current global crisis simply does not, and they're calling it a crisis, simply does not feel like a depression akin to the 1930s. It says 28 and 29 were times in the 20th century where wealth gaps reached such skewed extremes. Half the unemployment rate, half the unemployed had been out of work for over 6 months, and something that was not repeated until the 2000s recession. Okay, so pretty much most of that is self-explanatory. And it says in 2007, and 2008 eventually saw the world reach new levels of wealth gaps, inequality that rivaled 1928 and 29. So that's the world we're living in right now. So so pretty much, the point is hit home. Let me just read this bit. It says the depression originated in the United States, and after stock prices that began in 4th September 1929 and became worldwide news in the stock market's crash on the 29th, 1929. It says between 29 and 32, worldwide GDP fell by an estimated 15%, which is all of them things gonna come, but they're gonna come worse, man. All right, and it says worldwide fell by less than 1% from 2008 to 2009 during the Great Recession. It says some economies started to recover by the mid-30s. However, in many countries, the negative effects of depression lasted until World War II. All right, so they're going to show you here how different people survived all of that. But we know, look, there's only one way to survive what's going to be coming out here, man. Okay, there's only going to be one way to, survive what he's calling an economic shitstorm. All right, the worst in 80 years. Right, the only way to survive that is if Yahweh Hashem Yahushua is with you. So, hopefully I didn't get too deep into all of these different things, because really, that deserves, all that's being said there, deserves, and I might do it one day, deserves like a good thorough 40-minute video, hour video, so we just touched on certain bits. So with that, I'm going to say, all praise unto Yahweh Hashem Yahushua, double honors to the Apostle GMS. Shalom.